Of 5 people, 3 must pay a price. You are not one of them, Jingyuan. You are one of them.
When I first watched the cutscene at the end of patch 1.0, I was instantly hooked. I want to know the story behind Blade's ominous words and its implication. Hey guys, my name is Chris and today I'll present you with the beautiful and tragic story of the High Cloud Quintet. To understand this story, we'll have to go back to a series of events happening more than 700 years before the events in the main story. The series of events which eventually culminated in the dissolution of the quintet in the year 7379 of the star calendar. So sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy the story. The High Cloud Quintet was made out of Jingliu, Jingyuan, danheng, Yingxing aka Blade, and Baiheng. They were founded and led by Jingliu with the purpose of saving the Xianzhou Yuche from the assault by the denizens of abundance, also known as the Abomination of Abundance. The denizens of abundance are blessed with immortality and they view their god as benevolent. Anybody who slandered their god must pay for their accusations. The reason why they become hated by others is the fact that their life extension protocols are unacceptable by many. Practices such as rejuvenation, interspecies blood transfusion, hibernation, molting among others are sometimes practiced, and some denizens risk losing their minds due to the risk inherent in the practice. They will turn into mindless beasts if the process fails. For a long time, the Xianzhou battled against the abundance, and the High Cloud Quintet played a huge part in the defense of Xianzhou ships. Jingliu's ferocity as a swordmaster, Jingyuan's battle stratagem, the Imbibiter Lunae's power as High Elder of the Vidyadhara, Baiheng's archery and starskiff piloting skills, and lastly Yingxing, a human who crafted unparalleled weapons for his 4 comrades, are indispensable in the defense of the Xianzhou. Their adventure came to a conclusion one day when the High Cloud Quintet was battling Shuhu, who was the leader of the denizens of abundance. Danfeng, who assumed his dragon form, fought with magic claws and fang to destroy the true body of the envoy of abundance. Unfortunately, his attempts were futile because no matter how hard he tore at Shuhu's body, the bulb of shape-shifting shadow of flesh and blood just refused to die. That was until a starskiff driven by Baiheng ran through everything like an arrow shaft. The sheer force of speed and explosion destroyed the starskiff was finally enough to destroy the bulb of flesh all at once. Baiheng, who had sacrificed herself, crawled out miraculously still alive from the debris, holding a sun of absolute darkness in her hand. The item in her hand throbs with menacing power, and without warning, it grounded everything to oblivion, including Baiheng, who was still holding onto it. This was when the event called the Sedition of Imbibiter Lunae took place. Danfeng stole the power of the abundance and invoked the Transmutation Arcanum, where he then performed the ritual to name a new Vidyadhara High Elder, who as we know is Bailu. They also attempted to bring Baiheng back to life. Not only did the ritual fail, the tampering with the ambrosial harbor caused the creation of an abhorrent beast. Not only that, Yingxing, who helped the Imbibiter Lunae to tamper with the ambrosial harbor, was struck with Mara and somehow became immortal with an undying body. This caused Yingxing aka Blade to harbor an immense hatred and resentment towards Danfeng or danheng, his reincarnation, hence leading back to the start of this video where he is saying in particular that danheng has to pay a price. When Jingliu heard of what happened, she rushed to the Scale Gorge waterscape, and in her in-game character lore, it was stated that she was there when the draconic abomination appeared. In other words, Jingliu was aware of the attempt to resurrect Baiheng, as well as the ritual to name the new Vidyadhara elder. She was so angered by what Danfeng had done that she felt her core esse, or I guess her soul, boiling with anger. At this point of time, she released her most powerful attack yet, as she conjured her sword made from a shaft of sharp eyes, which according to her lore weighs nothing. Although she had been haunted by Mara for a while, I believe that it is at this moment that Jingliu lost control of the Mara. In order to prevent her mind from losing grasp of reality, she tore off a part of her skirt and used it as a blindfold, so that she would not accidentally have to look at and be reminded of the event that would trigger her Mara from going out of control, namely the site where she killed the draconic abomination. Eventually, she lost control of her Mara, which led her to slaughter the Cloud Knights and her own people. This led to the confrontation with Jingyuan where she was defeated. She then left Xianzhou as a wanted criminal, and with this, the High Cloud Quintet effectively was disbanded. As for Jingyuan, after defeating and saying his final farewell to Jingliu, he served as one of the 7 Arbeiter generals of the Xianzhou Alliance. He led the Luofu for centuries, and his wisdom and attention to routine measures is unparalleled. He even took in an apprentice, which reminds him a lot of when he was younger. After Jingliu beat the draconic abomination, the Council of the Vidyadhara had the Imbibarda Lunae seal away the frenzied dragon into the Grade 3 of the Ambrosial Arbor. With his final duty done, the Imbibarda is thus sentenced for his sins. He was imprisoned, tortured, and questioned by the elders, to which he stayed silent. They considered sentencing him to death, but in the end, with Jingyuan's negotiation, he was spared with being forced to go through a molting rebirth, basically an incomplete reincarnation. Now we know that was how danheng came about, how he escaped from the Luofu prison and how he was exiled, and also be taken in as a trailblazer aboard the Astral Express. As for Blade, he too left the Luofu and he traveled the universe in search of death. He swore vengeance on Danfeng for ruining the place he called home, making his body an abomination and failing to resurrect Baiheng properly. From the in-game lore, every time Blade and danheng cross paths, they will fight, and each time none will appear as a victor. Although danheng does have the upper hand in most of the fight, but each time Blade is killed, he will just resurrect himself. So that is why the fight always ended in a stalemate. Coming back to the events of the current day, 700 years after the dissolution of the High Cloud Quintet, Jingliu is finally back in the Xianzhou Luofu with the intention of handing herself to be judged for the crime she committed many hundred years ago. Before handing herself in, however, she wanted to perform a send-off ritual for Baiheng and to have one final reunion with the surviving members of the quintet. She had somehow managed to sneak an invitation letter for danheng on the Astral Express, and during the reunion, the other surviving members, Jingyuan and Blade, were also present. During the reunion, we finally understand the meaning of the phrase mentioned by Blade at the start of the video.
Of 5 people, 3 must pay a price. Imbibitor Lunae, the chief culprit, chose to use the transmutation arcanum as a means of resurrection, begetting terrible transformation and great calamity in the process. He dishonored the name of the fallen, Ying Sing, the accomplice, arrogant and oblivious, used the flesh of the Abundance Emanator to assist Imbibitor Lunae in his evil. He fell, becoming an immortal abomination. As for Jingliu, the sinner, she succumbed to Mara, slaughtered her people, and abandoned her oath. Now it is time we pay for what we have done.
And then, We saw the final spar between Blade and Jingliu, where once again Jingliu defeated Blade, stabbing him through the heart with his own sword.
I will deliver you a brief moment of death. We were here once, 700 years ago. Laughing, sparring, and thinking about the future. Their faces still linger before my eyes, like a bygone dream. I thought those joyful days would flow indefinitely before us, like a Cianzhou lifetime. Yet, dreams will eventually fade like clouds from the sky.
For a few blissful moments, Blade experienced death before being pulled back into the living, thanks to the curse of the abundance on his flesh.
It's as if they're saying, Why? Why did you and Imbibitor Lune commit such an unforgivable sin? I know that you have no interest in my answer, which is why I asked the question as you looked me straight in the eye. I've asked myself that same question infinite times, but was never able to find the answer. Why? Why is it that only the abominations can return time and time again? Why does someone like her have to be buried, burned to ash, and eventually forgotten? Why? In the end, you unleashed the final piercing blow and left both me and the sword in a withered grave. The miraculous thing is that in my brief moment of death, all the pain went away, like when we drank to drown our sorrows.
I find that this set of cutscenes is really nice to sum up what each of them are encountering and the reason behind why Blade was willing to help out Danheng in reviving Baiheng. With everything she set out to do accomplished, Jingliu bade her farewell to the High Cloud Quintet once and for all.
High Cloud Quintet. It is time to say goodbye.
And there you have it, the story of the High Cloud Quintet. So what do you guys think about it? Let me know in the comment section. To me, this is such a beautiful and tragic tale of 5 really talented individuals who were swallowed by the hubris of the Imbibitor Lune, whose unity fell apart after the death of their beloved friend, Baiheng. I feel that Baiheng really was the heart and mood maker among the quintet, even though this is not mentioned explicitly in the story. Her energetic smiles would have brightened up the group's mood. I also like how Danheng finally was able to find his own path with his friends on the Express, instead of being weighed by the sin of his predecessor Danfeng. Lastly, for Blade, he will have to bear the curse of an immortal flesh as the curse of the abundance, until true death came to him as prophesied by Ilio of the Stellaron Hunters. I'm definitely curious to find out more about his tales in the upcoming patches or expansions, and I hope you are too. Now, if you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like, comment on what other HSR lore you'd like to know, and also subscribe for future updates. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys on stream or on the next video.